live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening. A lean and mean show today. We've got a very lofty movie to discuss, and we have some Oscar talk as well, because the Oscar nominations are just a few days away. I think they're the 8th. I think they're February 8th this year. You've been hearing very little buzz about them, which is just concerning enough. But they are going to have a host this year. It's going to be somebody, and I'm kind of surprised they haven't announced it yet. But we will talk about some of the host speculation to round out the show, and we've got a review of Netflix's movie, The Lost Daughter, which I can't wait to talk about, truthfully. I saw this movie about 3 weeks ago or so, and it was very loosely on my radar up until it started showing up on a ton of critics' best of list. And it's definitely one to talk about. Olivia Colman, Dakota Johnson, and also directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal in her directorial debut. So, and I really schedule it almost selfishly because of the fact I want to know what these two gentlemen who are smarter than me think of the movie as well. So I kind of was selfish in that regard of making you watch it, because I'm like, this movie like made me a little uneasy and like made me think about life in a different way. Let's see if I'm just narrow-minded or these two gentlemen have other thoughts on the same course. But good to be with you. Obviously, yours truly. It is Sleepless with Steve. Dominic Guanzon in that blue polo, a little brighter blue, a little deeper blue than normal on that polo. And Joe Viso over here, reliving his college days by going to college yet again. And you can see those money bags under his eyes. That's the vision in his eyes right there. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing good. I also watched this movie 3 weeks ago because when you added it to the schedule, as soon as you texted us, I was like, you know what? Like, I already saw Scream in theaters, and the next 2 weeks are going to just be our best of worst of them. Like, I might as well just stay ahead of the curve so I have more time to do schoolwork. So I knocked it out. So I am interested in seeing now that it's actually like, because usually when we review movies on here, I'll end up watching it. Like, if it's something in theaters, I'll see it obviously the weekend it comes out. Or if it's a Netflix or streaming release, I'll watch it maybe a day or two before. So it's a little like fresh in my mind, really fresh in my mind, I should say. And I'm coming in hot. This has been sitting with me for like quite some time. This is probably like the longest a film has sat with me before we had to actually review it.
It's a movie that sits with you. And it's funny, my co-host on the radio too, it was like the weekend. I saw it on a weekend. And then I came back on a Monday and we were talking about what we watched over the weekend, because that's what we do. That's what you do when you work with Steve Pulaski. You talk about what you watch and compare notes. And I was telling her, I was like, you should watch The Lost Daughter. And then I remembered she's a mother of a 2-year-old with one on the way. And I'm like, maybe you don't want to watch this. I don't know if you want to see this, you might want to wait, because she's expecting now. I'm like, you might want to wait till you can have a glass of wine, like it's a little bit.
Like the main characters.
Exactly. It's I don't want to say the D word, doozy, but it's a lofty movie. That's kind of the word I keep associating with it. But we will get into that though. First and foremost, gentlemen, how are you? Dominic, start with you.
I'm doing all right. Just surviving the snow. We didn't even go into work today. The office called off, and we weren't really off. So we had just more meetings than usual, as you do. But it was good. And I am thankful for that. And thankfully the HOA came around and they were like, all right, 13 inches. I guess we'll go out and we'll call the plow guys. And thankfully they actually did this time, because I think they only came out once before that. And things are happening in this neighborhood. Let me say that. I'll keep it right there and I'll give you updates next week.
Nice. Yeah, quite a bit of snow. We both, we live in, distinctly separate regions, about, decent space apart. But we got about the same, because we got about 8 inches out here. And man, it was rough, man. I mean, this is one of the most significant snowfalls we've seen in quite a while too. And yeah, the roads were almost completely untouched going to work this morning in my car. When it is this bad out, and there's several regions in the country that do not experience this. When it is this bad out and you get like 8+ inches of snow, down south at Bloomington got over a foot. They got over a foot of snow down south. And it's like, you don't have a car at that point. You have a 2-ton sled. That is what you have. And it is dangerous. It is dangerous. It is really tough to drive in some parts too. And the worst thing you can see is a red light, because then you have to stop and then start to get going again. If you're on it and you're kind of coasting, you're pretty good with snow. But it's when you have to stop, especially abruptly, that's when you run into trouble. Joe, how are you though? That said, that little PSA about snow, which we've all driven through.
Luckily my boss was cool with me today. They're not very keen on letting us work from home, but my boss knows out of everybody at that office, everybody's got a car that has all-wheel drive except for me. So my boss was very casual about like, hey, look, if the streets get plowed and you feel safe enough, you can come into work. If you don't feel safe enough to drive on the streets and like snow just continues to permit, feel free to just to stay at home and continue working there. So I got to work from home today. Not that they won't see it, but special shout out to them for letting me do that. Other than that, though, I mean, we kind of hinted at, well, not hinted at it. I mean, I even brought it up last week. But yeah, I've been going back to school, and it's been not rough, but it's just, getting back into the swing of things at school. I'm feeling better already. We're 3 weeks in with my program. I'm already on my 3rd paper that I have to do, so we'll see how it goes. And yeah.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, I know it's hard to get back in the groove of something like that. I don't know. I can believe, though. I could believe it's hard to get back in the groove of school after having been off of school for so long. But I know you, and I know your work ethic, and I know how passionate you are about what you do. So I got the utmost faith in you there.
Thank you.
But we're going to start. You know what? I think I said earlier that we're going to end with the hosting thing. You want to start with the hosting thing, then we'll end with the Lost Art, or then we'll go into the Lost Art. Do you guys want to do that?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Let's start off like that, because I think it leads the title as well of the YouTube video. Tom Holland reportedly in consideration to host the Oscars. Now, this story is about a week and a half, 2 weeks old, admittedly. This kind of broke. This is one of the 15 stories to break while we were doing our year-end wrap-up of 2021. But with this story, though, this is interesting because as of today, Tom Holland still hasn't, I don't know if he's been invited or really how, contacted, or really kind of how the search committee works for a host, because the Oscars haven't had a host in 4 years. But the interesting thing, though, is that he's really the only name I've seen truly connected to this repeatedly. And maybe it's because he's a big celebrity. I mean, maybe it's because, obviously Spider-Man No Way Home is still in theaters or what have you. But he's really been the only name that I've seen truly deeply connected to hosting the Oscars. He came out today, in fact, and said that he thinks it would be a dream to host it alongside Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. That would be biblical. That would be biblical, to say the very least. But I like the pick of Tom Holland if he were to be the host of the Oscars for a couple of reasons right off the bat. Tom Holland is somebody who I think appeals to a lot of people. I think even recently, too, he's branched out to do more adult skewing fare. Cherry, which was last year, the Apple TV movie, Devil All the Time. Absolutely. He's had both of these movies. Granted, The Devil All the Time was the superior movie there, but point being, both of these movies have come to streaming services. Both of these movies have been watched, especially Devil All the Time. That was popular on Netflix for quite some time after it was released. So he's got that. He obviously has the appeal of younger people, too. And what have the Oscars been trying to do for the last several years? They've been trying to get a younger audience because of the diminishing ratings. You can't hide the fact the Oscar ratings have been diminishing over the last several years. I think picking Tom Holland would be a very good move because it would elicit a tune-in factor for people who might not truly care about the Oscars or truly be super interested in the movies. But if somebody tunes in, sees a clip of something that looks interesting, and theoretically too, not to branch too far or not to go too far away from the core subject here, but the cut and dry is this, though. The Oscars, in a way, should even be a little bit more popular now, considering these movies are so accessible. The bulk of the movies nominated this year, I guarantee you, are going to be on streaming services, whether it be Netflix. I got a feeling Netflix is going to nab a few. Netflix, Apple TV, Hulu, the streaming services. HBO Max, can't forget that, of course. Thanks for bringing that one up, too. You're going to have movies that are accessible now more so than they've ever been. Kind of the same with last year. So I think Tom Holland will elicit a tune-in factor if he is chosen. And Dom, I think you brought this up, and this is a good seg to throw it over to you too. I think you'd be correct too. I think you opined this a couple of weeks ago when the news first broke in the group chat. You were like, would he be the youngest Oscars host? And I maybe pause for the cause over here to verify that and fact check that. But I would believe he would be the youngest Oscars host if Tom Holland were to do it.
Yeah, youngest until proven otherwise, youngest guy to ever host the Oscars, height of his career so far, and he's Sony's leading man. He's in like a billion different Sony movies right now. It's like Uncharted plays right after the other trailer plays with
got
also
that
him
coming
in it.
out too. Yeah,
Exactly. I don't think it's going to do well, but just the fact that he's in that trailer, get some exposure, FaceTime, and he's literally Spider-Man. So it's like there's really, it seems like the most obvious choice. Having said that, and having sat with that info a little bit more, I do wonder if he'll be a good choice, because hosting is a different beast. Obviously a lot of crossover skills, charisma, acting, line reading, blah blah blah. But hosting is different. Not that he'll be alone. It's not like he's literally going to write all the jokes himself. He's not like Chris Rock in that regard. Did I say Chris Rock? I meant to say Chris Rock, right? Yeah, both of them really. But in any case, yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I think, well, no, Neil Patrick Harris, I don't know if he's ever hosted the Oscars, but he wasn't really a comedian, like stand-up comedian. But usually they bring in a lot of stand-up comedians, which actually makes sense the more you think about it. So it might be a make or break for Tom Holland, obviously not in his career, but make or break in terms of like, will this be the thing that breaks, like, will this be like, okay, now this is overexposure, and this will be like this is the thing that will be like that broke. It's like, okay, this is too much Tom Holland now. We need to reel it back. Or will he nail it? Which obviously I never want anyone to fail. So hopefully it does. But that's my trying to inject some controversy in here, but there's none really to be had. Yeah.
Before I throw it over to you, Joe, I did fact check this. Currently, Anne Hathaway is the youngest Oscars host. She was 28 when she hosted it. Tom Holland's 25. So he would be even younger. He would indeed be the youngest Oscars host.
I forgot that she
Doesn't that make you feel great?
No,
Doesn't that make you feel great?
She hosted it with James Franco, and that I always forget Anne Hathaway was the co-host, because every time I think back to that Oscars, I just think how high James Franco looked on stage.
I remember that too, because I almost forgot until I just read it. I'm like, that's right, Anne Hathaway did it, but Franco is just like giddy ear to ear smiling. I mean, more recently, looked like Jason Sudeikis at the Grammys when he was higher than hell on the Zoom thing.
Yeah.
You continue, Joe.
Oh, all right, I'm sorry. I didn't know if Dom had anything to like wrap up there.
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, of course, yeah. I would love to see anybody succeed in doing this, because I know the Oscars have been itching to find somebody to come in and host and attract the younger crowd while also appealing to the older crowd. And I think Tom Holland is, as even Steve was saying, kind of just a perfect pick for that, because even outside of the two movies we listed that went to streaming, Cherry and The Devil All the Time, I've talked to plenty of adults who aren't really big comic book fans, like both my parents, that came out of No Way Home and they were like, that was really damn good. That was a ton of fun. And I like that kid is a great Spider-Man. And maybe it's because I got to see him alongside the other Spider-Man, but they everybody I talked to about that movie like talks about how much fun it was to watch him like do that role. I've talked to people who haven't even seen the other two movies, but they just heard that Toby and Andrew were in there and like, well, I have to go see this, and they see how much money it's making. They're just like, well, I need to check this out. So I think he is a solid pick, but I do have the same concern as Dom. Is it too much overload of Tom Holland, where it's just like, okay, yeah, we just got him in Spider-Man, now we're gonna get him in Uncharted. We're going to be getting him in, I think, some other streaming movie this year that's going to Apple TV, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have him at the Oscars. And that's my biggest concern, too, is that, he's not a comedian. He's not a Seth MacFarlane, Chris Rock, or any of that. Every time I think like actors hosting something, it's mostly a miss more over than not. Especially like because everybody's like, oh, but he's in like the MCU, and the MCU is like really funny. Like all the actors are really funny and charismatic. I shit you not. Go back to the 2013 Academy Awards and look at the segment where they brought out all 6 Avengers on the stage to present one category, and how they just did not have any chemistry whatsoever with one another. You would think like, wow, damn, that movie must have sucked if these guys can't like toss jokes from one another. You have Chris Evans and like Robert Downey Jr. be like, and now here are the nominees for the best actor. And it's just like, oh my God. So it's like, it is a big concern. I mean, look, the interviews I've seen with Tom Holland, especially when he's with Zendaya, the kid's very charismatic. The kid's charming as hell. It's part of that Britishness to him. And if he's got Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to bounce off of, and if literally now that we're having the interviews with them, and they've been coming out saying like, yeah, half of that stuff we did was in the script, and the other half was kind of improv on set, and we kept it in the movie. Maybe it will go a better direction, or maybe it'll just seem like, all right, well, now it's just the Spider-Man comedy hour here, where they're just making 20 jokes about how we're Spider-Man and we're together. that like I said,
Andrew Garfield, I can see co-hosting. Tobey Maguire, I don't, unless it's going to be another sleeper hit, and we'll emphasis on the sleeper, but like it's going to be, I don't know. I'm actually getting more apprehensive the more we talk about it. Again, I don't want him to fail. I want it to be good, but like,
I did see in the article that we sent to the chat and everything from Independent, that Tom Holland, has been, he's been reported to be asked, but even he said, like, along with the whole thing that he would love to do with Andrew and Toby, he's like, well, maybe in the future, but in all honesty, I'm too busy right now. I don't have the time. He added that he would love to do it in the future. So maybe the kid is just honest, like, look, I know I can't actually do this. I'll find a different way of saying no. So we'll see. I think it is a good idea. It's a step in the right direction if the Oscars is trying to appeal to a younger crowd by getting somebody that, a ton of people who are his age and even younger would be like, yeah, I'll check it out. Because to me, I mean, look, whether or not you boost the ratings a ton with this Oscars by having Tom Holland, the clips on YouTube, if those sketches and those moments are like amazing, people are gonna be looking up those clips. People are gonna be like, damn, like that was a really fun Oscars. I should have watched that. And now you have them interested in coming into next year's, depending if you bring Tom Holland back or someone equally as appealing for that age demographic.
That's a very fair point. How would you feel about Tom Holland and Zendaya? Excuse me.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll be 100% down for that.
Yes. In fact,
we're talking strictly hypotheticals here, but I think if anything, them two could complement each other well and maybe iron out, or at least move through maybe some of the friction or nerves or apprehensions with ease.
Yeah.
Don't even do the 3 Spider-Men. Do the kids, even though they're 25.
Jacob.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
It would be interesting to see, though. We'll keep tabs on it, though. The Oscar nominations are coming pretty soon as well, I believe on February 8th. So maybe next week's show, that'll be the other thing we touch on, too, is in addition to Jackass Forever, which I am super stoked for.
God.
Cannot wait for Jackass Forever. That is a Friday afternoon. I'm probably going to go back and rewatch the original, because this it's so complex, and I haven't seen it in so many years. I don't want to, underestimate the complexities of the Jackass series, but yes, we will be reviewing that next week and keep tabs on the Oscars as well. It's Sleepless with Steve, coming to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening. Moving forward, we are talking about The Lost Daughter. Lofty movie I made you gentlemen watch. I don't know if it was on your radar really, when it was released or anything like that. It had a pretty low-key release, but still wound up being, how I understand it, pretty popular on Netflix. I did see quite a few people talking about this in my own personal sphere, as well as just on Twitter and the like, people talking about this. This is like the textbook kind of a movie, too, that like Had it would have gotten a conventional release in theaters, I think nobody would have saw it. But the fact that it was on Netflix, people tuned in out of curiosity or just blind faith, and they were treated as something a lot darker than I think that anybody, myself included, truly anticipated. I want to start by saying this, though, and then we'll lead off into the discussion on this, is that, I'm really impressed. There's a lot of things in this movie that impressed me, but I'm really impressed with Maggie Gyllenhaal. This is her first movie. This is her directorial debut. Obviously, Jake Gyllenhaal's sister. And Maggie Gyllenhaal, this is not a very easy first movie if you think about it. I mean, I don't know, for a lot of directors, I don't know if there really is an easy first movie or something that, goes everything according to plan. But if you look at this movie, which is kind of tough to explain, so I really think that like some directors of even a higher caliber would have struggled with this movie, because there's a lot of things about this movie. First and foremost, Olivia Colman's the lead of this movie. She plays a 48-year-old college professor who's on holiday in Greece, and she becomes sort of transfixed by this single mother played by Dakota Johnson, who is raising this young kid. And it's an intensely subjective point of view, to the point where you could even wonder if it's where you can make the argument, and I probably would, that it's an unreliable narrative in some aspects too, because it is so hyper fixated on Olivia Colman's Lita. It's got glimpses of the past that play, but they're not really flashbacks, or they're not used explicitly as flashbacks. They're like interspersed with the timeline to kind of show germane events between the past and the present. And you really have Maggie Gyllenhaal. She's not so much trying to make a linear timeline of the chaos, but she's making beautiful music with the chaos. And that's my first big thing I wanted to hit with this movie, is that Maggie Gyllenhaal doesn't really strive to understand Coleman's character's motivations, but she sort of just revels in her vulnerabilities. I think that's how I put it in my review. And that's the first immediate thing, like within the first 20 to 25 minutes of this thing, that was very abundantly clear to me. I'll throw it over to you, Dom. What say you, general thoughts on The Lost Daughter?
So I had no idea of anything of this movie going in at all, other than The Lost Daughter. And as the plot laid itself out, I was thinking, oh man, we're going to get like some kidnapping. Is there going to be like, police involved? Is there going to be some murder here? No, it's very low stakes. And it's just a character study for someone. It's like, yeah, what does it mean to be a mother? And then, or like, even how do you handle being a mother? And is it okay to just not be a mother? Or like, how do you, the struggles dealing with that? On top of that, it's like this, indirect study in, I don't know, I can't find the word, apathy, some sort of deep-seated depression, emotional procrastination. It's actually really, it actually became really fascinating, despite how seemingly boring it may seem at first. I don't want to pull too much from outside reviews, but there is a discrepancy here in the critics' reviews and the audience reviews.
Oh yeah.
a pretty sizable one. I think critics are like saying 90, 95, 98, and then audience is like the usual 0, but like,
50 popcorn bucket.
Yeah, exactly. And we won't go into that, but there's a discrepancy is what I'm trying to say.
For sure.
And I can actually see why. It really had to sit with me, Steve, as you said, and I actually found like the more beauty in it as it went on, and the acting here is actually really subdued, but really, really awesome. And it's type of acting you don't quite see very often. Probably the biggest character here is probably Ed Harris, which I actually found. I'm sorry, by character I mean like the most outwardly like obvious character here is Ed Harris. Everyone else is playing it much more subtle. Ed Harris here is just trying to get in someone's pants, which I dug, which was almost like a point of levity to some degree, even though he obviously had his emotional anchoring as well. But yeah, once, I think if you're someone who got bored by this, I think if you treat it more as just a character study, don't get too consumed by the plot and all that. just because, which may be a cop out. I can definitely see that. But um, if you just ignore that, the story kind of skips. One, it plays out of order, I think, at multiple times. And then also it kind of skips some big dramatic moments that, well, not all the dramatic moments, but kind of skips some like pathways to dramatic moments. It's like you're kind of just fast forwarding to this, as like how it feels like we kind of jumped into this. How did we get here all of a sudden? But once you kind of accept that and more so just treat it as here are the actors playing these characters and how does it come out of these situations, I think it can sit with you a little better. I don't know what anyone's take on that is.
Joe, what say you?
Um, I will also jump on the train of applauding Maggie Gyllenhaal because, recently we've seen a ton of actors actually become directors and actually just knock it out of the park. Like, it's actually shocking. Like, most of the time, like, you would hear that and it's like, oh, maybe it'll be an okay, like, first turnaround. We'll see how they do. But, like, Jordan Peele, Bradley Cooper, and many others. I mean, hell, fucking Regina King.
Olivia Wilde.
Olivia Wilde with Booksmart.
Olivia Wilde, Dave Franco with The Rental.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like you expect like kind of just like a standard movie, and then they go above and beyond, and really like it's almost like them being an actor, they know like probably what needs to be different in a movie and what needs to be seen in a movie. And Gyllenhaal found as like Steve was even kind of bringing up, just a unique way to kind of tell this story. I really actually. I'm glad Dom brought up the whole like thing about audiences and critics with this movie, because like this was like of course like when I finished it, so watch it again on Netflix, and my stepmom and my dad were like, oh, we've been hearing a lot of buzz about this movie, is it actually really good? And just to look at them and say like it is, but you guys aren't gonna like it. Like I'll tell you this right now, if you're the kind of person who's not into just a slice of life movie where it just goes into a person's like they're going on vacation, you might get a little backstory here, but just like seeing how they are during a certain event of their life, really just being like just that framing right there. If you're not into those kind of movies, you're probably not gonna like this movie. If you are into those movies, you'll probably love this movie. And I really loved how this movie started because it eases you into that. Like, it starts out, you're on this resort with Olivia. Oh my God, I almost said Olivia Wilde now because that's on my mind. Olivia Cook.
Olivia Colman.
Coleman. That's a different Olivia.
Oh, I confuse them all. There's Olivia Wilde, Cook, Munn, Coleman.
Yeah. Anyways, you're on this island with her, and everything, and it eases you into that. You're just like, I thought the same thing too with Dom. It's called The Lost Daughter. And it's just like, the minute that kid went missing, I was like, oh, okay, we're watching like a Gone Girl type of movie. All right, Steve.
Yeah,
oh,
yes,
never mind.
yes.
Never mind, we found her. Oh, this is actually really sad and depressing a bit. and like, this is kind of uncomfortable. But I'm about an hour into this movie, so I need to stick this out now. And I got to see how this all wraps up. Where it goes, like, about, motherhood and the lengths that mothers go to, really do the best for their own child while not also taking care of their own mental health issues, or just like, really focusing on their own, like, on their own health for that matter. It's very dark. And when Steve brought up how, like, he's like, oh yeah, you should check out this movie, to a woman who is raising, did you say she was raising a kid and she's pregnant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The same way that Steve was like, oh yeah, maybe you shouldn't like watch this movie. I very much agree with that. It reminded me very much of that Charlize Theron movie that we reviewed back on Sleepless with Steve when it was on the radio. Tully, where it's just like, I almost want to tell like any one of my friends, any like, family members who just had a kid or, are pregnant, do not watch this movie because it will make you afraid of post like pregnancy. And then, like, this one too I'm not gonna say it's gonna make you afraid to be a mother, but it is gonna bring up some, issues, I think, and like, some like pointers about like, the troubles of being a mother, even a single mother at that.
On the flip side, it does bring up a very rarely discussed topic, or at
Yes.
least a specific mindset and approach, which is like, because well, I should say, in all media, films in particular, mothers are heralded as, the bedrock of all families, the bedrock of the anchor of society,
We
as
gotta
they
get
should.
together for mom.
Exactly.
Mom needs us. Yeah, that kind of a thing.
But like, what happens if they don't pull through?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's some big pressure, right? All of society is indicative upon you. I'm talking to a mother, right? Indicative upon you to pull through for this life, and got to sort through all your shit, right? Mentally, physically, work wise, whatever. And then now you've got this whole life, that you got to raise. So then, like, what happens when you just break or you give up and you don't pull through?
What you're saying right there is what I thought we were going to get with Hillbilly Elegy. When it came to Amy Adams as a character and her mother, like, it's just like,
in some ways,
yes.
that is like,
yes,
this film actually does explore that, like what you're saying, a ton more than that movie did, because that movie was all about, like, oh, look how my mother's drug addiction. It's like, okay, but how did that affect the family overall? Because all I'm getting is just these very much overacting scenes from Amy Adams and everybody in the cast of her just wigging out because she's on heroin or whatever it was in that movie.
And even if they handled Amy Adams a lot better in that movie, you still have, it's still not a hyper-focused movie where, you still have Glenn. There's a redemption arc for everyone essentially here, which is kind of the conceit of the movie. It's a different movie, whatever. But the fact that this movie, there's really no big or obvious redemption arc. There's a resolution at the end of the movie, which is good. I'm glad they didn't completely cop out, or rather completely, go full on nihilist or whatever. But for the most part, there's really none of that here. And the longer this film goes on, by the time you hit the 90-minute mark, you're thinking, damn, there's really is there really any going back here for this woman? The fact that the film centered, it's like 60% her, even 70%, I don't really know, 70% her of her in Greece. She's older after all of this, all of the flashbacks, all of that happens, right? Most movies would focus on that part of her life. No, this is after. This is all after effects. And when you frame it that way, when you hit it from that point of view, that point in time, it drastically changes how this kind of story plays out. And that alone is genius. Now, granted, that's not necessarily Maggie Gyllenhaal's accomplishment. This is an adapted screenplay, but still, it's refreshing. And I'm real, and I think Maggie Gyllenhaal, to bring it back, I haven't sung my praises yet, but deservedly so. It definitely would have been fumbled in a lot of other directors' hands, I think.
And when you bring up those flashbacks, I mean, I'm just gonna call them flashbacks. I know, like, Steve, you mentioned how, like, they're not really used as flashbacks; they are used in a different way to tell a story. But those scenes with the actress who plays a younger version of Olivia Colman's character, I'm trying to find the actress.
Jessie Buckley.
Thank you. Those scenes, like that first one where, like, she breaks the doll by throwing it out the window and getting mad at her kids, I was like, I need to leave the room. I'm very scared right now. Like, this woman is, like, on the verge of just having a mental breakdown with these two kids.
But, like, those kids, like, that's how kids are. Not every kid, of course, but, like, that's how kids are, dude. They're little shits.
They are. No,
they don't stop.
This movie does not hide that. Like, I mean, when that kid is crying because she can't find her doll throughout that entire, like, 2-minute scene where, like, they're actually, where she really interacts.
Oh, the other kid, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about, like, present time, where she's interacting with Dakota Johnson's character, Nina. When that kid is just crying in the background constantly, just like, I can't find my doll. I almost wanted just to, like, I wanted to be like, man, if I was in that situation, I would be like, can you tell your daughter to shut up, man? I'm trying to relax on the beach.
No, it's true. I mean, you see that wits end element here in a lot of different ways. And, Yeah, and yeah, like that meltdown point too, especially when you have a kid like that who's very needy. You know what I mean? And like let's be honest too. I'm not trying to single out any particular kids. Kids at that age are very needy, from like 2 to 7.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like 2, like the age of 2, and I see it with like my friend's daughter too. At the age of 2, they think they have everything figured out because they're starting to learn agency of like they can say no and they can say yes and they can say I want this or I want that. You know, they start to develop that form of agency too, and that is grueling, especially when you're trying to, like, as you see with Lita when she's younger, played by Jessie Buckley. She's trying to advance her own career, and you see, you know, it's not the most intimate glimpse in the world, but you see flashes of like a mother who's trying to be a grad student, who's trying to further her career, but has to manage these 2 kids, and it's wearing, it's taxing.
Kids don't know how to be humans. Like, they don't know how to be functioning people.
No, they don't.
And that's not their fault. It's no one's fault. But like, yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, I have 2 cousins. One. I mean, they're much older now, but back in 2018, 2019, I used to like watch them from time to time. They were 6 and 4, and then they were 2 years apart of each other basically. The last time I watched them, they were 8 and 6. But just trying to tell them, like, I would show them Spider-Verse, or we were watching Wonder Woman one time, just any movie while I was like watching them, and just trying to tell them, like, can you just sit down and watch the movie? It's like they'll do it for like 3 minutes, and then they'll be like, I'm bored. It's just like, what are you doing?
They're like little squirrels. You know what I mean? They're like little squirrels.
They'll start picking up throwing stuff and like running around. It's just like, dude, can you stop?
You know, we're coming up on our intermission point right here, so we should take a break. I do want to, when we come back, I do want to talk about Buckley. I do want to talk about Jessie Buckley and how much she gives this movie in a lot of different ways, on top of Coleman, some, you know, touch on the acting elements too. And then even just going back to what I talked about in the lead, sort of the unreliable nature of the point of view that we're getting to. There's still a lot more to dive into with The Lost Daughter, and we will do just that back in just about a minute and a half right here at Sleepless with Steve. And back and better than ever after a very quick intermission. It is Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. We are talking about The Lost Daughter, now streaming on Netflix. It is Maggie Gyllenhaal's directorial debut, starring Olivia Colman, Dakota Johnson, and Jessie Buckley, who I want to mention too. First off, Jessie Buckley, who plays the younger version of the main character, Lita, the older version played by Olivia Colman. Jessie Buckley is the perfect counterpart to Olivia Colman. She's very believable, at least physically, as a younger version of Colman. Like, that's top-notch casting right there.
It's like, it's very much how, like, you know, when we get to like a ton of these blockbusters today, you know, like Marvel, Star Wars, DC, how they de-age like the actors for like flashback scenes. I was just sitting there like, damn, like, didn't even need DH technology. You just found a perfect actress just to play a younger version of this character.
No de-aging required. It was beautiful. Yeah, she's very good here, man. And she loans a really special sort of scatterbrained, stress to the wits end angle of that character too in her younger years. And then you can kind of see because like it works almost in like a triad way here because Olivia Colman is, obviously Lita as her older self in her present day. Jessie Buckley plays Lita when she's younger. And, the younger Lita is sort of still a reflection of the older Lita in some ways, but the younger Lita is also a reflection, too, of Dakota Johnson's Nina. So it like works in multiple different ways as like parallelism. And I found that very interesting. And like I said, brave enough for Gyllenhaal, who wrote this thing as well. This movie is, I don't think I mentioned it yet, is based off a novel by Elena Ferrante, working off a very dense, from what I understand, a very dense and a labyrinth-like novel. But again, doesn't try to untangle the chaos, is perfectly fine with leaving the chaos or the narrative sort of tangled, but incorporating it very almost seamlessly, I believe. What say you guys about just in Buckley or in general, the presentation, the structure of this movie?
Buckley actually popped up first on my radar in HBO's Chernobyl, which is just one of my most favorite
I still have to watch that myself.
Miniseries of all time. Joe, you're gonna love it. And she's proven to be great in everything she's been in since. I haven't seen too much, but in every clip I've heard that I watch, it's like, yeah, she can act pretty damn well. So it's good to see her kind of break into this as well. Not that this is even that big of a movie, but just tiny bits more of exposure until she gets a big one, if she even wants that. But yeah, her scenes really did grab me because they put everything in context. They were critical, right? Sometimes some past, looking to the past is like, yeah, we didn't really need to do this. This was the linchpin and everything. And I love it when a scene in a different time can put the future in a completely different light, not just to add a little bit. No, it actually puts everything into a little bit of light. It turns Olivia Colman's character, or at least her, forward in time character, from a Karen to a broken woman. And it's like, God damn, she made some big mistakes. And as we were talking earlier about, what does it mean to be a mother, or like, how can you handle the stresses of it? This movie doesn't really endorse the other side of that equation, right? This isn't a self-empowerment tool.
No, it's not.
Like, yeah, sometimes women just need to, or parents just need to take some time for themselves. No, this woman walked out on her kids on her
3 years.
Yeah, children, right? These aren't like, oh, they're in college, we can like take a break. No, children. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty messed up. Yeah. So that I still can't get over that this film. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm glad, like, props to Gyllenhaal for doing this. Maybe this is, and it's probably, this is how it's done in the book as well, I'm assuming. But like, I'm glad, like, it didn't like try to take like the happy route of that, where it's just like she ended up reconnecting with her. No, it's an honest look, a realistic, honest look at this situation like this, and like,
definitely
what it could do to an individual like Olivia Colman. And it's just like, yeah, like what she does, like, there's no denying it. What she did to her kids, yeah, walking on them for a whole 3 years, leaving them with her ex-husband and everything while they were children, still developing and everything. It's a horrible thing to do. On the flip side, like, you get why, though. Like, you understand. It's something like you don't agree with, but it's understandable. It's like, man, like, this movie, it's like, I love when movies manage to do that, because we don't get it typically nowadays. No. Especially with a movie like this. It'll be something very black and white, like Hillbilly Elegy. And I'm going to keep beating down that movie 2 years after it's been out, like, but it's still... this movie was like very much slice of life, an honest look at a situation like this. Dom, did you have anything else you wanted to add on to Jessie Buckley?
Not her in particular. In fact, I wanted to move on to like the moment by moment. Like, do you think this film could have been cut down even further? Like, did it need to be 2 hours, do you think? Because that was my one gripe of it, which is not even that big of a gripe, but it's like, because I can forgive it for taking its time, or can I don't know. Where do you guys stand on that?
I think normally I'm always the type of person, like, when I hear the Batman's 3 hours long, it's like, cool, we're getting a 3 hour Batman movie, but wait till we get the death of his parents for like the 60th time in a row that I'll say, yeah, we could have cut that out of the movie. For me though, like, as much as I always love, like, hey man, the shorter you can make a movie, the better, and if you can like hit every note possible, cool. I think I don't know, like, normally I would agree for this kind of movie. It's just like, I think spending actually just even moments of just like something so casual, has nothing to do with the plot, like Olivia Colman just walking back to her hotel and getting hit by a pine cone or something, like just stuff like that, like it just added to the story. It added to the character. It added to like being in her shoes, being in her mindset, what she's seeing. Because I mean, those scenes where like she's just sitting on the beach and she's just looking around and looking at people, really, like you get to understand her character even more. Like, I think, like, and what she's dealing mentally. And I think the runtime, well, yeah, like you could trim it down. And I totally agree with you, Dom. I think it's fine here because it just allows you to explore that character more, spend more time with them, and during those quiet moments, allow you to think about, like, man, what is really going on in their head, especially with the information that gets provided as the movie goes along.
Yeah, I concur. I concur there. I wouldn't have trimmed it a whole lot. What were you gonna say?
Now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of the awkwardness in
her character actions or interactions,
exactly,
yeah,
it before I was thinking, like, it probably didn't help that I was playing like action video games beforehand, just before watching this, where it's like I'm in, like, yeah, go shoot,
nice,
looking at it now, thinking, I'm developing this as we're talking, a lot of her awkwardness does make sense when you are emotionally stunted with a deep trauma and guilt of leaving behind your children who, 15 years later, right? She clearly has not gotten over. She probably even hasn't processed it too much. Again, slice of life is a very precise slice of life. So maybe some more stuff happened outside of it, but we'll take the movie at face value. And this is probably the most she's developed emotionally since then. So it's, in that way, I take back then. I take it back. I can forgive it for its 2 hour runtime in that case, because she is so damn awkward in those. Like, really, I really meant it when she said Karen. She's thrust into some situations where it's like, no, those kids at the theater were being dicks. Dude, when she threatened to cut their dicks off, I'm like, no, they deserve it. Oh
man, when you're trying to watch a movie, you get mad. I mean, we can all agree, and I think Joe, after last year, that the deluge of experience he had too, man, it makes you want to commit violence. Like, it really does. And what's only stopping you is the fact that you're a decent, sane human being. But. And I'm glad you brought that scene up, though, because here's the thing, and I want to hit on this before we do give our final ratings here, is that there is like an element of this movie that I think definitely qualifies as an unreliable narrative. And I'll give this example. First off, the theater experience, I think, is entirely accurate, because, like, I feel like you would not, like, if she's going to retell that story with a bias or a degree of fiction, she's not going to make herself out to be that big of a victim, like, or somebody who's like it painted in that pathetic of a light. You know what I'm saying there? Yeah. Like, she's really rendered pathetic by the end of that scene.
Yeah.
Just the whole thing. Here's what really got me thinking about the reliability of her as a narrator, though. There's a scene that will suggest, there's one scene in particular that suggests like a certain interaction didn't occur the way you thought. And the specific circumstances kind of elude me for a moment, but I'm lifting this from my review, though, is that there's one example where Nina, Dakota Johnson, puts her hand on Olivia Colman's cheeks and kisses her on the lips. Well, then we get a reverse shot look at Lita, showing her smiling as a result of it, but it doesn't show Nina's hands lifting from her face. Mm-hmm. And, like, you can chalk that up to continuity. You can chalk that up if you want, but even Nina's position like the way she's sitting doesn't reflect the distance, the appropriate distance between the two women that would have suggested a kiss had just occurred. She's sitting far enough away where she would have really had to lean in, versus in how we see it initially, the two of them, how close they are. There's little instances like that I think have to be conscious decisions from Gyllenhaal.
Steve, I'd have to go back and look at the footage, but
watch the tape.
And I can't. I can't even dispute that. I'm just saying, if she was an unreliable narrator, then yeah, she would have made that dude she was sleeping with look way better. like, is it me, or like, did that dude not look attractive to me at all? Maybe it was just that scrawny looking beard, or like not scrawny, but rather scraggly looking beard. But anyway, just throwing shade for the sake of it. I actually kind of want to watch at least a few of these scenes again, because it's, I don't know. It's where I will say that the shitty kids, not the children, but the teenagers or young adults, I don't think that's being exaggerated. Kids are dumb. They can be that dumb.
I agree.
And rowdy. But
Dom with that boomer energy. He's like called out kids like several times, like between this and the Holland segment. Like, man, he come with that boomer energy. Get off my lawn, Dom over here.
As a former kid, I can definitely say we can be dumb.
Oh, for sure. We can go into final points on this. Let's start with Joe. He usually ends it. We'll go Joe, you, Dom, and then I'll conclude. What say you, Joe? Your final thoughts, summations on The Lost Daughter.
If I would have watched this before the end of the year of 2021 when we did our best of lists, I probably would have just been like, man, maybe I'll actually throw this in there, at least in the top 10, because I actually thought this was very well done. Maggie Gyllenhaal, like, man, like, your brother kills it on screen. I think you're gonna kill it behind the camera, because like this is her first go around, right? Like this is her first outing as a director.
Yeah.
Then yeah. Yes, it is.
This is one hell of a turnout. That's all I gotta say. Jessie Buckley, I saw her in Fargo season 4. I thought she was amazing in that. I said, man, I can't wait to see her in another project eventually. And little did I know she was going to be in this movie. So when she popped up, that surprised the hell out of me. And to say that she plays Olivia Colman, the younger version of Olivia Colman's character, just as good as Olivia Colman's playing the older version. Like, that's the contrast makes perfect sense. Like, you could see it there. That's just saying like a ton, because Olivia Colman, I mean, like recently, especially with The Favorite, has been killing it in movies, man. So the fact that I could compare you to Olivia Colman and be like, you're just that good, says a ton. This movie is just it's just good. I mean, like, it's not made for everybody. You could tell it's made for us film buffs, film geeks who really love to like look at movies like this and talk about them like a movie book club, like this show is. But it's movies like this that, like, as much as I do love going to see movies like Spider-Man No Way Home and coming to talk about it with these guys the week after, or Matrix Resurrections, or hell, even Jackass next week, to talk about our favorite moments, what we loved about the movie. It's movies like this, though, that make me love doing this show equally as more, because it's just fun seeing what you interpreted from the movie, what you got from the movie, and what you thought of it overall. This movie's 3.5 out of 4 stars for me.
Wow.
Dom, your thoughts?
Yeah. This is actually one of those movies where I look at it and I go, is this breaking not quite new ground, but is it just new to me, or is it really that refreshing to see? And I think it's both. Of course, I need to watch more slice of life. I'm really latching onto that term now that Joe brought it up.
Did you ever see Lady Bird, Dom?
No, actually, you know what? That's actually the other movie I was thinking. Like, I feel like there was one other movie where I wanted to watch.
Oh, you need to see that one.
Yeah,
I heard. Yeah, because that was another
Ronan.
female director.
Yeah,
who's really killing it. So I definitely need to watch that. But overall, this is something that was really refreshing to me, and I would actually be interested in looking at it again with a much more critical, more artsy fartsy lens, because it's certainly not going to be a Marvel outing where you just have to sit back and relax. But it's actually really provoking, both in its themes in its filmmaking. Now that Steve and Joe are making me think about it more, and I'm really happy. This is really a bold first step for Gyllenhaal,
Yeah.
and it's funny because it's such a low stakes, such a quiet and introspective movie, but still somehow manages to be really bold. Not like and it's not even the fact that it's so highfalutin of a movie either, because a movie like the Shakespeare movie that's going to come out, black and white, with Denzel Washington.
Tragedy Macbeth.
Yes, Macbeth. It's like that's a very artsy fartsy movie, but it looks like it's going to be freaking epic with those shots, and Denzel being being the great actor that he is. And this is the opposite of that in terms of how quiet it is, but still manages to make a big impact. So yeah, I'm totally looking forward to it. 3 out of 4 stars to me. That might even bump up to 3.5 if I find the time to look at it again.
And let me correct myself too. Lady Bird is directed by Greta Gerwig, not Saoirse Ronan. It stars Saoirse Ronan.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Yes, Greta Gerwig. That was her debut. I'll be quick with my wrap up though. This movie's about a lot of things, and I know it's kind of cliche to say that in some ways, but like it really is about a lot of things. But I think what degree, if any degree of selfishness, is allotted in motherhood, I think that is one of the most paramount themes in this movie. And it really gets you to reflect on the sacrifices mothers make, and they spend so much time caring for their children that they routinely neglect their own well-being. And my mother told me years ago, she told me growing up, she said, there wasn't a time when I was like, she's like, when you were little and you were sick, that I didn't wish that I was the one who was sick in order to take your pain away. And that's always resonated with me. But that kind of empathy and that kind of like real love, that's liable to catch up to you in some ways, whether it be mental health, whether it be physical health, whether it just be lack of, affording yourself any rest or anything like that. There's a lot of ways that can be really harmful. And I think that you see the repercussions of it very, very distinctively in this movie. I really give Maggie Gyllenhaal a tip of the cap. She does a tremendous job in this. Coleman, Buckley, Dakota Johnson too, who Dakota Johnson now is really hitting like,
dude, hell yeah,
like a McConaughey like I don't really think it's a renaissance period, like a renaissance, like she has to go like she's improving upon that, like her earlier works, but even still with the 50 Shades movies, I guess you could argue that no, she's hitting a stride now that she's been on, I would say, since last year with that movie Our Friend. I keep bringing up Cha Cha Real Smooth. She's hitting an incredible stride now.
I want to see. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, man, like just as like with the Twilight movies, Pattinson, when those movies were all said and done, and like just out of nowhere, the dude was just being like, yeah, I just want to do weird stuff, and it was killing it. Dakota Johnson's like, yeah, I want to pull back and do more like low key movies, and just killing it. Like it's the same effect. And I'm not saying like Dorian, what's his name, the guy that played Gray in those movies.
Jamie Dornan
and Kristen Stewart, like they're also in great things, but to me it's just like Pattinson and Johnson have gone on to like really shown like, yeah, okay, those movies should not define my career because I'm actually this good.
Yeah,
I want to see a documentary, it's like 50 Shades 10 years later or 20 years later, and just see how better everyone's acting
60 Shades later.
Yeah. Exactly.
60 Shades later. 3.5 out of 4 stars for me with The Lost Daughter, though. Really liked it. Glad you guys brought some good perspective to it as well, as I knew you would. And that'll do it for a nice lean and mean Sleepless with Steve. We'll be back next week to talk Jackass Forever. Cannot wait. Looking forward to it. I believe the original movie is on Netflix or some streaming service at the moment. Which I can't wait to revisit. I'm going to try to sit through the one stunt I've only ever successfully made it through once.
It is on Paramount Plus for anybody that does want to watch it.
It is on. Oh, I should have figured that. I should have figured that. But what I'm saying though is the one stunt I'm going to try to sit through, unblinking and watching it, like with the robot chicken, the robot chicken intro with his eyes popped open, is the paper cut scene.
Oh,
in the original.
No.
Because of all the stuff they've done, that is the most wince-inducing stunt.
It's because you can actually like relate to it.
Yeah.
Like
We've all
you
suffered
can't
paper
relate
cuts.
to you can't relate to being in a porta potty being flung 100 feet into the air at Mach 2 speeds, but you know what it's like to have a paper cut.
Me and Joe are like wincing over
I'm
here.
squirming in my chair, dude.
God, man. No, it's true. Like you can't relate to getting shot out of a cannon. Most people can't, but you can relate to paper cuts. And man, I can't wait for Jackass Forever, man. Don't tell me cinema is dead. I'm getting me a large popcorn on Friday. That's our show, though. Thank you guys for joining us. And highlights be posted on YouTube and at stevepulaski.com. For Dominic Guanzon, Joe Viso, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.